Hi, I'm Nikki the coach. I am a United States Marine turned resilience coach. And I created this series to help folks who are like me, struggling with the issues that I have been struggling with over the last 10 years. These are issues that I've been really digging into and redefining in my life. And I'd like to offer some of my insights for others. The real world tips and guidance for people who are struggling with perfectionism, with overthinking, with feeling burned out, and the general feeling of just feeling like you are disconnected from everything that is important to you. And my subject today lays the foundation for all of my other topics. So I can't overstate how important it is. I actually recommend taking notes on this. Go get your favorite notepad, get a really nice pen, write down some ideas, and possibly even go back and watch this video one or two more times just to make sure you're getting all that you can out of it. When I started my coaching business in 2021, I was initially calling myself a mindset coach. And I still consider myself to be that, but what I've done is I've taken that concept and I've narrowed it down to resilience. And I've done that for a very specific reason. After doing research, I came to a very startling conclusion. You ready? Here it is. There can be no health without resilience. I'm going to say it again. There can be no health without resilience. Any form of health that you think about, be it physical health, mental health, spiritual health, every single one of those requires a level of resilience to be present. So by the end of this video, I think that you'll have a pretty clear idea of why it is so important that every single person have resilience on their radar in some capacity. So I will be sharing my top 4 methods for developing resilience in your life today. So they're real world examples that you can apply, whether you're driving to work in the morning, or you're having a discussion with your partner, or you're just trying really hard not to punch your annoying coworker in the face. The topic of resilience is really vast and really complex. So this is essentially a crash course in the role of resilience in your physical, your mental, and your emotional health. In layman's terms, resilience is a person's capacity for making a comeback and moving beyond whatever damage or hurt comes our way just as a consequence of being alive. Which, by the way, being alive is it's hard. I don't think that there is enough emphasis on how difficult it can be to adult well. And I think embracing this notion that we don't have our shit together all the time is the first and very powerful step in cultivating more resilience in our lives. Now that we have divulged what it is, let's take a quick moment and dispel some of the misconceptions about what resilience is not. Being resilient is not the same as being unemotional. Resilience is not being unaffected by upheaval and by challenge. And it's not abrasive. It's not controlling. At its core, resilience requires us to practice and to be a little bit pliable. Just like the definition said, it implies a flexibility and a willingness to bend and adapt to the situations as they arise. Being in the Marine Corps was a nearly constant test of resilience. The Marine Corps culture is very unique. We bond through misery because we do what's called embracing the suck. And this is a notion that comfort is not something that we are owed. And we need far less than we have been conditioned to believe. Learning to get by with less and adapting to situations as they unfolded and using what was at your disposal were just things you did every single day. You just did them. So my time in the Marine Corps was really a 4-year lesson in rising to the occasion by default and then processing it later when the shit was no longer hitting the fan. So my time in the Marine Corps was easily my most, I would say, my most stark experience with resilience. But the word itself came back to me when I was working a pretty stressful job. And I'm pretty sure this is like 2017. And we had a consultant come into the office and do this resilience test, their proctoring a test. My results essentially told me that I was resilient to a point that I left very little room for spontaneous moments and for decompression. I was just always on, always looking for problems to solve, always thinking, always trying to predict what the next thing would be to happen so that I could, prevent it or change what was going to happen. I really couldn't tell you what was going on. I just know that was my habit. That's how I moved through my day every day. I'm sure all my fellow A-types can understand and empathize with this notion that I was really excited to find out that I was at the top threshold of the resilience scale. And then after I was excited about winning my resilience test, I came to that portion in the test where it's telling you where you stand to improve, which is oddly my least favorite and my most favorite aspect of any personality test. My test results essentially told me that I needed to chill the F out and let my guard down once in a while and be a little bit more spontaneous. And I'll actually provide a link for a resilience test in the description box if you're wondering where you stand on that resilience test. I don't know for sure that it's the exact same, but most of them come out to be pretty close in their results. Obviously, resilience is not a new notion. There's been a lot of research done on the topic. And what we've really come to learn about resilience is that people will respond in one of four ways to a problem. One is that the person remains dysfunctional. So they stay in a state of mind where they start developing these very maladaptive coping strategies and indulging in pretty self-destructive behavior. Person number two is the one that recovers from the experience, but they still feel a pretty regular degree of disruption in their life. Person number three is going to be the one that feels the disruption is going to eventually be overcome. So they eventually return back to a state of balance, even though they may not feel okay in the moment. They know eventually that they will be okay. And then finally, you have your people who feel like any kind of failure or disruption in their life is going to serve as an opportunity for them to grow and increase their resilience and take an experience away that they did not have before. Why become a resilience coach? I went back and forth between concepts of being a mindset coach, empathy coach, an A-type, a neurodivergent coach. All of these things felt equally important to me until I realized that all of them boiled down to the same core concept, and it went far beyond personality traits. It was not nearly so superficial as being just how somebody operated in the social realm. It's not just preferences. It goes far, far deeper than that. And it is a much more universal human experience than I think a lot of us believe. I've gotten to that point where the sun is setting and is burning straight into my retina. Resilience is the key to both survival and thrival. That's a new word. I just made it up. It has a nice ring to it, survival and thrival. But really, it's about not just being able to survive and carry out the tasks and the behaviors that you need to carry out as a responsible adult, but it's about tapping into a sense of being grateful to exist. So I'll give you a real world example of what resilient mindset looks like and what let's call it a brittle mindset. Let's make those two comparisons. So let's say that you are at work and something gets messed up, and it's messed up because of something that you didn't catch or something that you did. So very quickly, if you're anyone who's like me, that one mistake can start to follow you through the entire day. It doesn't even have to be a major mistake, but the fact that it happened is enough to stick in your brain. And when it gets stuck in our brains, we fixate on that mistake, and that fixation renders us being preoccupied, which actually leads to us probably making another mistake. So it can quickly compound from being an irritation or just a simple embarrassment to being a full-blown bad day. It is just a rancid day at work. And some indications that you might be getting pulled into a thought spiral and getting trapped by that mistake is it's going to make its presence apparent to you in how your thoughts actually show up. So some thoughts that might pop up will sound like this. What is the matter with me? Why do I have such a hard time with time management, details, keeping a schedule, whatever your gripe might be? Why do I keep making this same mistake over and over and over again? I'm not cut out for this work, and that's why I'm never going to get promoted. I always do this to myself. I am beyond help. I am never going to become successful if I do not get a handle on these details. I feel like I'm going to just do nothing. I'll just sit here and do nothing. Tip number 1 for cultivating more resilience in your life is my favorite because it's so easy to do, and that is laughter. Laughter is really helpful for interrupting the thought spirals that we can find ourselves getting sucked into during the day. Laughter also releases these really, really great hormones, and it decreases your level of cortisol, which is that stress hormone. Laughter also boosts the immune system functions, and shaking your body like you do when you're laughing really hard physically releases tension from your body. Eckhart Tolle talks about this in his book, The Power of Now. He tells a story of a time that he was watching ducks on a pond, and he noticed that at certain points, the ducks would have some tension. There would be some kind of drama happening. And after this drama had fulfilled itself, after this drama was finished, the ducks would separate and they would both go their separate ways. But even after separating, both of the ducks would really vigorously shake their wings. They'd open their wings up and they'd flap their wings pretty hard as if they're about to take off. And what Eckhart Tolle recalls recognizing in that moment is that it is very natural for us to have pent-up energy and pent-up stress. But the thing that humans do not do, that animals seem to do a very good job of, is releasing that abundance of physical stress in our bodies after we've had a really tense moment. How many times have you had a stressful situation that you did not get up and immediately move or do something? Because the truth is that for most of us, when we're having a stressful situation, it is happening when we are sitting at our desk. It's happening when we are driving in our car in a traffic jam. It's happening when we are on the phone with someone and not physically staying in front of them. So very often these are conditions that make us feel obligated to stay put or to sit still. And unfortunately, that becomes a habit where we think that walking around feeling stressed out is normal. It might be common, but that doesn't make it healthy. The thing is that most of us nourish those stressful moments. So we end up keeping them alive and we focus on them. And that's what really causes our stress to root down and become an active disposition. And then the disposition turns into a mood, and the mood in turn ends up shaping our mindset. So think of a desktop, like your computer desktop. The emotions that you feel the most often and the thoughts that you have the most often are the things that have shortcuts. There's that little icon on your computer that you can double click and access that right away. The things that you don't use often are typically more buried in the computer. And the same is true with our mind. The mind wants to conserve energy and it wants to take shortcuts even to our own detriment. It's not a perfect system. So make a point to bring more mirth into your life on a regular basis. Make it a ritual in your day. Watch a funny video in your car before you go into work. If you want to be really weird, try and sneak up on yourself in the mirror to see if you can scare yourself. I got that one from a particularly funny friend of mine who challenged me to do that, and it worked. I could not take myself very seriously. Remembering to not take everything so seriously is actually good for your cells. It's good for your tissue. It's good for your neurotransmitters. Not only is it just plain good for you, but it helps interrupt those thought spirals that happen during the day, and it catches them early enough and soon enough that that's when it's easy to get out of the thought spiral, is if you catch it right away. If you ride it for a while, it's a lot harder to get out of. All right, tip number 2 is going to be optimism and self-efficacy. So I broke those up because there is a little bit of a difference, but they end up supporting one another. So when I'm talking about optimism, I am not talking about having that completely uncharacteristic, positive, toxic positivity. You know what I'm talking about? There's people that deny that bad things happen because they think that that's being positive. That's not what being an optimist is. Optimism is not just thinking positive thoughts. It also requires a level of mental and emotional buoyancy and a trust that our worst case scenario thinking is our mind's way of trying to plan ahead. But the thing is that the mind is not a very good predictor of events. It's actually really inaccurate when it comes to that. So the scenario crafting that we do causes our minds to shotgun all of these really unhelpful ideas and to go in all these different directions without actually reaching a resolution or reaching some kind of knowledge. Optimism is this belief that you have been through challenges before and you have survived 100% of those problems up to this point. Our beliefs actively shape what we see, like what we physically see, what our brains retain, and it even affects how we remember events. Tip number 3, reframe your stress. The feeling of stress is a constant, but the response to your stress is completely up to you. So I've had a few dicey experiences in my life that flooded me with adrenaline. And what I noticed is that anxiety and excitement feel really similar. And if I took notice of something that was giving me anxiety, instead of falling prey to that fight, flight, or freeze feeling that anxiety typically brought about, I instead did something else. Instead of fighting the feeling and instead of feeling bad that I was all wound up tight about some detail, I would tell myself that I'm just excited about something. I'm ready to take action, and I'm paying really close attention to my surroundings, and this is just me being really excited because I'm about to take action of some kind. My 4th and final tip for cultivating more resilience is acceptance and presence. So I put the 2 of those together here because one of them begets the next. So feel your feelings and treat them like heartbeats. One heartbeat is not going to be better than any other heartbeat. They come and they go. So think of awareness as being like a heartbeat, or better yet, think of it as like being space. So think of it as being like the open sky, and think of your thoughts as being like clouds. Some are fluffy, some are ominous, some are really heavy, but they're all made of the same stuff. So the clouds have no impact on space. The space itself is a constant, and by remembering that, it really throws into perspective the nature of those shifting clouds. A quick practice for presence is to focus on a body part. So I like to focus on the palms of my hands. Palms of your hands are loaded with nerve endings, and so it's really easy to clue into what your hands are feeling. So focus on the palm of your hands and maybe something else. Maybe it's the muscles around your eyes. Maybe it's the fact that your tongue is nearly always locked to the roof of your mouth. So if you have a thought pop into your head and it sounds like this is a waste of time. I have way too much to do than to be sitting here thinking about how it feels to have hands. So I'm going to challenge the notion that being productive is the most important state of being, because it is an actual brainwave function. Listen, I love being in the flow while I work. I love getting sucked into like the time vortex because I've been doing all this stuff that I'm so enthralled with that I don't even realize how much time has passed. But as fun as it can be to get all those tasks knocked out, I am recognizing that that state of mind is not something that I can just call upon command. So I need to cultivate that space by allowing myself to fall out of that expectation more often than I expect to be in that state of mind. I hope that makes sense. You almost have to leave room for the thing to grow. So when you think of your ability to be present as a houseplant or as a pet, it needs nourishment in order to thrive. That drive for performance is not a sustainable pace. Even for the most proficient of A-type people like me, that pace is just not sustainable. So resting is a non-negotiable step in building your resilience. So when you're resting, actually rest. Don't be doing other things while you're resting. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Don't be guilt tripping yourself out of a resting state of mind by thinking about all the other things that you need to be accomplishing right now. So consider this your time that you are sharpening your axe. A sharpened axe gets way more done than a dull axe and really stiff shoulders. So become aware of how much noise you're creating in your mind when you are just sitting in a completely benign and even benevolent environment, sitting on the couch, laying in bed, and how easy it is for us to create these scenarios in our heads that convince us we're somewhere else. By remembering where you are, we're able to actually banish, or at the very least, poke fun at all of the ways things could be going wrong. So acceptance makes you alert. It reduces the stress response in your body, which can lead to, rash behavior or incomplete action because you're just acting to act because the stress is demanding that you do something. But doing something isn't always exactly what you need to be doing. Sometimes you need to be hitting reset, getting some distance between you and the problem, and taking a break. Taking a break does absolute wonders for being able to see things clearly. Sometimes you need to walk away from something in order to see it better. As a final note, it's worth remembering that resilience and congruence go hand in hand. If you would like to learn more about congruence, I'm going to go ahead and attach a link in the description box. I did another series on congruence, and I'll include that for those who are curious about how those two go hand in hand. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I hope you got some really, really solid, great takeaways about how you can be cultivating more resilience in your life. And I'll catch you again on another episode. Bye.